Hi everyone, it's Kevin Annett. It's July 6th, 2014. I'm speaking to you from what used to be known as the territory of Canada. And I have a commentary today that affects all of us, especially those within the Canadian so-called nation. It's called Genocide, or Crime of No Consequence. The Great Obfuscation Carries On, and some thoughts on what comes next. Children who are routinely raped and tortured don't smile, despite the blank grimace they have to don for the official photographs. That's why I knew that the just-released books I came across yesterday in a Vancouver newsstand were not simply bullshit, but well-crafted bullshit, complete with front-cover images of cheery-faced, well-groomed youths. But since the books had to do with Indian residential schools, the lie is not only acceptable, but actually required now more than ever here in Canada. Our Great White North went through an uneasy period briefly, as it struggled to cope with the facts that I, more than anyone, have made public, of mass graves of little brown kids, the eyewitnesses who dug the tombs, and the volumes of statistics and reports and letters proving that 50,000 and more little innocents were deliberately wiped out by church and state to get rid of the Indian problem. National politicians like Gilles Duceppe even started referring publicly to massive deaths and mass graves, alongside their usual nonsense about apology and reconciliation. And even the G word began to crop up sometimes in media reports whenever they referred to the Indian schools. But that, unfortunately, is as far as things went, and now that period is over. Nowadays, the clock is being deliberately turned back, and rapidly, as our memories and reason are under assault once again by a big brother with more than blood on his hands. Now, we're going back to the days when the church leaders responsible for the crime and its attending cover-up can publicly claim without consequence that their motives regarding Indians were only pure. And the mass graves of the children, of course, remain unopened. An entire history of homegrown murder is once more being officially erased, as are those like me who meticulously documented it and shoved it in the face of mainstream Canada. And since that's all to be expected, I guess it's something that one either has to laugh at or pick up the sword about again. Well, frankly, it's harder for me to once more hoist the old banner about the Canadian Holocaust, since people generally are dumber nowadays, including the self-styled progressives who just don't want to hear about crimes in their own backyard. The standing editorial policy in Canada's corporate media never to mention my name or cite any of my work has had its deadly effect. And so even as our campaigns against child torture in high places have spread globally, inspired directly by our success in exposing genocide in Canada, even now it's as if that crime has never occurred, for there have been no consequences for any of those who are responsible. Still to this day, not one person has gone to trial in Canada for the death of one of those 50,000 children. They've gotten away with it. And there will be no consequences on church and state leaders, now under the present Canadian arrangement. Which brings us, as they say, to the heart of the matter. We shouldn't have to live alongside crime or fund it. That's just common decency. But the law goes further and says that we don't have to and must not collude with such wrongdoing. And that simple truth is just beginning to penetrate the thick skull of Canada. Namely, that our rulers and our churches have not only nullified our allegiance to them by their crimes and wrongdoing, but they have forfeited the right to even exist. Canada, as we know it, is over. Now, I told that to one of our local Mounties the other day when I showed him and gave him a copy of the stand-down order issued against all Crown agents by the common law courts in Europe and here in Canada. The same common law courts that convicted his boss, the woman in London who likes to call herself Queen Elizabeth, convicted her for crimes against humanity. I said to this cop, "You're not obligated to serve a criminal." Well, he looked troubled. He didn't dispute me. He didn't tear up the stand-down order. He actually took it away with him and read it. Now, more of those kinds of ripples are joining across Canada into a big wave of change that I see everywhere, as mere protest is giving way to something altogether new in our land, the active reclaiming of it, under the banner of a new nation called the Republic of Canada. Some of the new bright souls of this movement are much younger than me, thankfully, One of them is a young farmer from Saskatchewan who was told the government's fraud-driven Canadian Revenue Agency to stand down from their effort to seize her land, using our evidence to show that so-called Crown courts have neither legitimacy nor lawful standing anywhere in Canada. Another such giant killer of our movement, Steve Finney of Kitchener, Ontario, has forced the local courts to back off from their child trafficking practice, and to even acknowledge that they are indeed operating as de facto rather than as lawful public courts. Steve and this young farmer and dozens like them are gathering on October 27th in Winnipeg, Manitoba, to help found a nation free of a past of crime and corruption. That Republic of Kanata will be one of our answers to the great Canadian lie, and to all of those butchered children still lying in the ground, and all of the children being trafficked and violated as we speak by wealthy, protected, and unaccountable men in church, state, and the corporate world. So while the time for holding placards in front of child-killing churches may be over, the time to seize those churches and occupy them for good has arrived. And that goes for the courthouses and the parliament as well. And yes, all those banks of silver and gold that are draining away the wealth of our land. You know, they say when one door closes, another opens. And that's true even when it comes to genocide and crimes on our own backyard. So I say to all of you, long live the Republic, and stand by for more information about the Convention and the upcoming Declaration of Independence from Britain and from this corporate tyranny that we all live under, and which we're fighting against at every moment. Long live the Republic, and I thank you.